Look under the table, sir. Maid's toddler warns billionaire at dinner. Fiancée was scared. I thought this was just another rich family story. Until this happened. A 3-year-old little girl. Barely tall enough to reach the dinner table. Couldn't even tie her own shoes. But somehow, she saw something that every adult in that room completely missed. And when she tugged on the billionaire's sleeve and whispered those 5 words, "Look under the table, sir," everything changed. The fiancé's face went pale. The guests went silent. And a man who thought he had everything suddenly realized he had been living a lie. I need you to stay with me for this one. Because what this little girl did that night didn't just save one man. It saved an entire family. Welcome back, beautiful people. If this is your first time here, I am so glad you found this channel because this is the place where we share stories that genuinely move your heart, change your mind, and remind you that real human moments are more powerful than anything Hollywood could ever write. Before we begin today's story, drop a comment right now and tell me where you are watching from and which country you belong to. I genuinely love reading every single one of your comments, and it always amazes me how far this community reaches. Now, what you are about to hear is one of those stories that starts simple and quiet, and then builds into something so emotional, so unexpected, so deeply human, that by the time it's over you will be looking at the people around you in a completely different way. No spoilers. No previews. Just trust me and keep watching. 'Cause this one is special. Sometimes the people we overlook the most see us the clearest. His name was Marcus Ellison, 32 years old, self-made billionaire. The kind of man whose name appeared in Forbes before he turned 30. He had built his tech company from a single laptop in a college dorm room in Atlanta, Georgia, and by the time he was in his early 30s, his company was valued at over $4 billion. He had a penthouse in Manhattan, a vacation home in Malibu, and a private jet that he used more than most people use their cars. From the outside, Marcus looked like a man who had absolutely everything figured out. But the one thing Marcus always said he was most proud of, more than the money, more than the company, more than the magazine covers, was that he never forgot where he came from. He grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Georgia. His mother cleaned houses for a living. His father drove trucks. They were good, honest, hard-working people, and Marcus carried that with him every single day. He was generous. He was fair. He treated his employees with respect. And when he hired staff for his home, he treated them with the same dignity he would give any colleague. That is how Rosa came to work for him. Rosa Delgado was 38 years old. A quiet, gentle woman from Houston who had been a housekeeper for nearly 15 years. She was efficient, kind, and deeply professional. She never overstepped, never complained, just did her work with a quiet grace that Marcus deeply respected. When Rosa's regular childcare fell through after a difficult personal situation, Marcus told her without hesitation, "Bring your daughter. Have a big house. There is room." And so little Lily came too. Lily was 3 years old. Big brown eyes. Wild curly hair that her mother could never quite tame before 9 a.m. She was small and quiet and usually spent her time at the house sitting in the corner of the kitchen with her coloring books while Rosa worked. She rarely spoke to Marcus. She was shy around him the way small children sometimes are around tall, serious-looking men in expensive suits. But occasionally, when Marcus walked through the kitchen and caught her eye, she would give him the most enormous smile. The kind of smile that 3-year-olds give freely and without condition. And every single time Marcus would smile back. He didn't know it yet. But that little girl was paying far more attention than anyone realized. Now here is where the story shifts. Marcus had been with his fiancée, Diana Caldwell, for 2 years. Diana was 29, strikingly beautiful, a former event planner turned social media personality with nearly 2 million followers across her platforms. She was charming, polished, effortlessly magnetic in any room she walked into. And Marcus, this brilliant, guarded, quietly lonely man, had completely fallen for her. They had gotten engaged 8 months earlier at a private dinner in Paris. Diamond ring. Rooftop view of the Eiffel Tower. The whole picture-perfect story. Marcus had never felt more certain about anything in his life. Diana was the missing piece, he told his close friends. She was the one. The engagement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in late October at Marcus's Manhattan penthouse. 60 guests. Catered dinner. A string quartet. Rosa had been helping prepare the home for 3 days straight. And because it was a weekend and Lily's regular babysitter was unavailable, Rosa had quietly set Lily up in the corner of the butler's pantry just off the main dining room, tucked away with her coloring books, her juice box, and her stuffed rabbit named Mr. Ears. The party began beautifully. 60 people. Champagne glasses clinking. Laughter filling rooms that usually felt too large and too quiet. Diana floated through the crowd like she had been born for exactly this moment. Greeting guests, laughing at the right moments, touching Marcus's arm at the right intervals. She was perfect. And Marcus stood beside her thinking, yes, this is right. This is exactly right. But Lily, tucked in her little corner, was watching. And Lily had seen something earlier that evening that she did not have the words to fully explain. Not yet. But something in those enormous 3-year-old eyes had locked onto it. And it was sitting in her little mind like a stone. Here is a question for you. Have you ever had a feeling that something was wrong before you had any proof? Tell me in the comments. Because what comes next proves that sometimes our instincts, even at 3 years old, are smarter than our logic. The most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in perfection. The dinner portion of the evening began at 7 o'clock sharp. Rosa and the catering staff moved quietly and efficiently, serving the first course as the 60 guests took their seats at the long, elegantly arranged dining tables. Marcus sat at the head of the main table. Diana sat to his left. Close friends, business partners, a few family members. All gathered to celebrate what everyone assumed was a love story heading toward a fairy tale ending. Rosa moved between the kitchen and the dining room carefully, professionally. And Lily remained in her corner of the butler's pantry. Quiet, content, drawing a purple horse in her coloring book. But here is where things begin to quietly unravel. About 20 minutes into the dinner service, one of the catering staff, a young man named Jerome, came to Rosa in the kitchen with a confused look on his face. He had gone to the small storage closet at the end of the hallway, the one that sat just adjacent to the private sitting room off the main dining area, to retrieve extra napkins. And when he had reached for the light switch in the darkened hallway, he had heard something. He wasn't sure what it was. Voices, maybe. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. Assumed it was guests who had wandered away from the main table. He told Rosa only because the closet door had been slightly ajar when it should have been closed, and he wanted to make sure nothing had been disturbed. Rosa nodded, told him she would check it out, and went back to managing the dinner service. She had 60 people to feed and a timeline to maintain. She filed Jerome's words in the back of her mind and kept moving. But Lily had heard Jerome tell her mother that story. And Lily had also, earlier that evening, about 45 minutes before dinner, wandered briefly out of the butler's pantry when Rosa had been briefly occupied. She had padded quietly down the hallway in her little socks. She had heard voices coming from behind a door. She had not understood all of the words, she was 3. But she had seen something through the small gap at the base of the door. Something that her child's mind registered not as adult complexity, but as simple wrongness. She had seen shoes. 2 pairs of shoes. 1 pair she knew. Heels. The pretty heels that the nice lady who smelled like flowers always wore. The lady who was going to marry Mr. Marcus. The other pair of shoes she did not know. She had stood there for a moment, then padded back to her coloring books. She did not fully understand what she had seen, but it had settled in her chest the way certain things settle in the hearts of small children, not as a thought, but as a feeling. Now, back in the dining room, Diana was laughing. Perfect laugh. Perfect timing. Marcus was watching her with that quiet pride a man carries when he believes he has chosen well. The guests were engaged. The food was beautiful. The string quartet had begun to play softly in the adjacent room. Everything looked exactly right. Rosa came to refill water glasses at the main table. She moved behind Marcus, then behind Diana. And as she reached across to fill the glass of the guest beside Diana, she paused. Just barely. Just for a fraction of a second. Because she had noticed something. Under the table. Diana's hand. And the direction it was moving. Rosa completed the pour. Set the pitcher down. Walked back toward the kitchen. Her face revealed absolutely nothing. She was professional. She was calm. But inside her mind was turning. She did not say a word. And she told herself, "It is not your place. You are the housekeeper. Stay in your lane. This is not your business." But then Lily appeared in the doorway of the butler's pantry. She was standing at the edge of the dining room entrance in her little pink socks, clutching Mr. Ears by one worn cotton ear, staring directly at Marcus with those enormous, serious brown eyes. Rosa turned and saw her immediately. She moved quickly toward her daughter, intending to scoop her up and bring her back to the pantry before anyone noticed. But before Rosa could reach her, Lily had already taken 3 small steps into the dining room. And her eyes were still locked on Marcus. And Marcus, who had glanced up at exactly the right moment, saw her standing there. And something about her expression stopped him completely. What would you do if a child looked at you with that kind of seriousness? Would you stop and listen? Or would you assume it was nothing? Think about that, because in the next section everything breaks wide open. One whisper from a child. That was all it took to unravel 2 years of deception. The room had not noticed the little girl yet. The conversation was flowing, the music was soft, and 60 people were pleasantly absorbed in their own worlds. But Marcus Ellison, who had spent years making billion-dollar decisions by reading subtle shifts in a room, had noticed her the moment she appeared in that doorway. He excused himself quietly from the conversation beside him, leaned slightly forward, and gave Lily the same warm, gentle nod he always gave her in the kitchen. Lily took 2 more steps toward him. Rosa was right behind her, reaching for her shoulder, whispering softly, "Lily, baby, come on, sweetheart, come back with Mama." But Lily gently shrugged her little shoulder free. And she kept walking, straight to Marcus. She stopped right beside his chair and looked up at him with those enormous brown eyes. And then she reached up, her tiny hand barely reaching the edge of the dinner table, and she tugged very gently on his sleeve. The guests nearest to Marcus had begun to notice now. Few soft, warm laughs. "Oh, how adorable." A couple of people reached for their phones. Marcus turned fully toward her. He leaned down slightly. "Hey, Miss Lily," he said softly. "You okay?" Lily looked at him for a long, serious moment. Then she leaned forward on her tiptoes, as only a 3-year-old attempting to whisper can, and she said 5 words in a small, clear, earnest voice that was just slightly too loud for a whisper. "Look under the table, sir." The guests within earshot heard it. Few more quiet laughs. Kids say the darndest things. Someone at the table made a light-hearted comment. Marcus himself smiled, that automatic social smile that happens before understanding arrives. He looked down at Lily again. "Under the table." She nodded. Once. Completely serious. No smile. Just those grave, enormous eyes locked on his. And Marcus, perhaps because of everything he had built on instinct, perhaps because of the way Rosa had suddenly gone very still beside him, perhaps simply because of something in that child's expression that could not be manufactured or faked, reached down and lifted the edge of the long white tablecloth. The room did not stop. The music did not stop. Most guests noticed nothing at all. But Marcus stopped. Because under that table, hidden beneath the long draping cloth, Diana's hand was resting in the hand of the man sitting 2 seats to her left. Not a casual touch. Not an accidental placement. Fingers interlaced. Held grip. The kind that carries a history. Marcus straightened slowly. His face completely still. He looked at Diana. Diana was mid-laugh with the guest to her right, and she had not seen him look under the table. She turned back toward Marcus with that perfect, practiced smile. And she saw his face. And her smile fell. Just a fraction. Just a crack. But Marcus had spent a decade reading boardrooms and negotiation tables. He saw it instantly. He said nothing. He set down his napkin. He pushed his chair back gently. And he said to the table in a perfectly calm voice, "Excuse me for just a moment." He stood. He walked to the man 2 seats to Diana's left. A man named Garrett Cole, whom Marcus knew as a mutual friend, someone in their extended social circle whom he had personally invited to this very celebration. And Marcus looked at Garrett for a long, quiet moment. Garrett's face had already said everything. Marcus nodded once, like he was filing a document, like he was closing a meeting. Then he walked out of the dining room, down the hallway, into his private office. And he closed the door behind him. The room felt the shift immediately. The way a room always feels when something real has passed through it. Diana excused herself from the table 30 seconds later. And Rosa stood in the doorway with Lily in her arms, heart hammering, completely uncertain whether she had done the right thing by not stopping her daughter. But Lily had gone completely calm. She rested her head on her mother's shoulder. And she looked across the now quietly murmuring room with those big, satisfied, peaceful brown eyes. Like she had simply done what obviously needed to be done. What would you have done if you were Marcus in that moment? Would you have confronted Diana right there at the table? Or walked away the same way he did? Leave your answer in the comments. Because what happens behind that office door will absolutely break your heart before it puts it back together. A broken man in a quiet room. And a knock on the door from the last person he expected. The office was dark except for the desk lamp. Marcus sat in his chair, not slumped, not shaking, just very, very still. The way a man goes still when the world he believed in turns out to have had a different architecture than he thought. He could hear the muffled sounds of the party continuing, the catering staff maintaining things professionally, the music still playing softly. Outside his window, Manhattan glittered the way it always did, completely indifferent. Diana knocked on the office door 3 minutes after he sat down. He told her to come in. She entered looking exactly as she always did. Composed, beautiful, controlled. And Marcus, to his own quiet surprise, realized that he felt less anger than he expected. What he felt, more than anything, was a deep, settling grief. The kind that comes not from shock but from recognition. The feeling of a truth you had been half knowing for a long time, finally arriving all the way. The conversation was not a screaming match. It was not theatrical. It was quiet and honest in a way that some conversations can only be when the pretending is finally over. Diana did not deny it. She told him it had been going on for 7 months. She told him she had been trying to find a way to end things. With Garrett, she clarified, though Marcus wasn't sure he believed that part. She told him she did love him. Marcus thought she probably meant that too, in whatever way she was capable of in that moment. Marcus listened. He nodded. And then he asked her one question. "Were you going to tell me before the wedding?" She was quiet for a long time. And the silence answered the question more completely than any words could have. Marcus stood up. He walked to the door. He opened it. And he told her, without cruelty, without drama, that he would have his attorney contact her about the dissolution of the engagement. And that he hoped she found whatever it was she was actually looking for. Diana left. Garrett had already quietly disappeared from the party. The guests, those closest to Marcus, had begun to quietly understand that the evening had shifted into something no one had planned for. The catering staff, led gently by Rosa, had begun the graceful, professional work of transitioning guests toward the exit. No announcements. No explanations. Just a quiet, dignified conclusion. And in the middle of all of it, Rosa appeared at the office doorway. She had Lily on her hip. And she looked at Marcus with an expression that held something complex. Professional concern, human compassion, and also the unmistakable anxiety of a woman wondering if she still had a job. "Mr. Ellison," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry. I should have. I didn't know whether it was my place to." Marcus held up one hand gently. "Rosa, you stop. Your daughter did something tonight that I don't think I will ever forget," he said. His voice was steady but not quite smooth, the small roughness that honest emotion leaves in a voice. "She saw something that I should have seen. And she walked into a room full of strangers to make sure I knew." Rosa looked at her daughter. Lily looked back at her mother with complete innocence. "She said you told her," Marcus said. "That telling the truth is what good people do. Even when it's hard." Rosa blinked. Her eyes were filling. "I tell her that every day." "It shows," Marcus said. He reached out then to Lily. And Lily, who was normally shy with him, leaned forward without hesitation and patted him once on the cheek with her small open hand. The way children comfort. Completely unself-conscious. Completely pure. And Marcus Ellison, billionaire, self-made man, person who had negotiated hundreds of millions of dollars without blinking, had to look away for a moment. Because that small hand on his cheek broke something open in him that probably needed to be broken open for a very long time. Do you believe that children see the world more clearly than adults sometimes? I really want to know what you think, because what Marcus does next proves that this little girl didn't just save him from a bad marriage. She changed the entire direction of his life. What a 3-year-old taught a billionaire about what actually matters. 3 months passed. The engagement story had not gone public. Marcus was private and careful, and those close to him respected that. He had taken some time, stepped back from the social circuit, spent more quiet evenings in the penthouse that had always felt slightly too large and slightly too empty. But something had shifted in him. Not broken. Shifted. The way furniture shifts after you rearrange a room. Everything feels different at first, and then suddenly more spacious. More honest. He called his mother in Georgia more often. He took a 2-week trip to see her. Just the two of them, sitting on the porch of the house he had bought her, drinking sweet tea, talking about nothing important and everything that was. He came back to New York feeling more like himself than he had in years. And one Tuesday morning, he came into the kitchen to find Rosa preparing the house for the week, and Lily sitting in her usual corner, working with extraordinary concentration on what appeared to be a drawing of a dinosaur wearing a hat. Marcus poured his coffee. He sat down at the kitchen counter. And for the first time in the nearly 2 years Rosa had worked for him, he didn't go straight to his phone or his laptop. He just sat there, in the kitchen, with his coffee. "What's his name?" Marcus asked, nodding toward the dinosaur. Lily looked up, considered him carefully. "Gerald," she said, with complete seriousness. "Gerald's a good name," Marcus said. Lily nodded, apparently satisfied with his assessment, and went back to work. Rosa glanced at him from across the kitchen. There was something new in his posture, an easiness that hadn't been there before. A loosening of that constant, forward-leaning tension that ambitious, driven people carry like a backpack they've forgotten is there. "How are you doing, Mr. Ellison?" Rosa asked. Simply. Genuinely. "Better," he said. And he meant it. A few weeks after that morning, Marcus called a meeting with his legal and HR team. He established a formal scholarship fund, the Lilly Foundation, though he didn't announce the name publicly at first, specifically designed to provide full educational support for children of domestic workers and household staff across the country. The initial endowment was $8 million. He funded it from his personal account, not the company's. When Rosa learned about it, when she saw the paperwork and the name, she had to sit down. Marcus told her it was the least he could do. That one moment of honesty from a 3-year-old had saved him from a marriage built on a lie. And that he had been thinking about how many children like Lily were sitting quietly in corners of houses across America. Overlooked, underestimated. With enormous hearts and clear eyes and zero resources to match. He told Rosa he wanted Lily to have whatever she needed. Whatever education she chose. However her life unfolded. He wanted there to be no financial ceiling on that little girl. Rosa cried. He tried not to. She was professional. But she cried anyway. And Lily, who had wandered over to see what the adults were doing, looked between her mother and Marcus with practical 3-year-old concern and held her stuffed rabbit out toward Marcus. An offering. Mr. Ears. Her most important possession in the world. Marcus looked at the offered rabbit for a moment. Then he shook his head gently and closed Lily's small fingers back around it. You keep him, he said. He belongs with you. Lily considered this. Then she nodded wisely. And climbed onto the kitchen chair and went back to Gerald the dinosaur. And Marcus sat there in the quiet kitchen. In the penthouse that had always been too big and too empty. And for the first time in a very long time, it didn't feel that way at all. Marcus Ellison had spent his life building things. Companies. Wealth. Reputation. Future. He was brilliant at constructing things, strategies, systems, plans. But it took a 3-year-old girl with wild curly hair and a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Ears to remind him of the one thing no amount of intelligence or success can build for you. Clarity. Lily did not understand wealth or social politics or the complicated arithmetic of adult relationships. She just knew what she had seen. And she knew, because her mother told her every single day, that good people tell the truth. Even when it's hard. Even when they are small. Even when the room is full of strangers and everyone is dressed in things that cost more than her whole world. She walked in anyway. And that walk, 5 small steps in pink socks across a Manhattan penthouse dining room, changed everything. The moral of this story is not about betrayal. It is not about billionaires or maids or diamonds or deception. It is about this: the people we overlook often see us most clearly. The voices we discount often carry the most truth. And the smallest acts of honesty, done by the smallest people in the quietest moments, can redirect the entire course of a life. Treat every person with dignity. Listen to the unexpected voice. And never ever underestimate a 3-year-old with serious eyes and something important to say. If this story moved you even a little, if it reminded you of something real, something human, something you needed to hear today, please take 2 seconds and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this story reach people who need it. And if you believe that honesty matters, that children carry wisdom we forget to respect, share this with someone you love. Friend, parent, sibling. Someone who needs a reminder today that truth, no matter how small the voice it comes in, is always worth listening to. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories like this. Stories about real human moments that remind you of what actually matters. And drop a comment right now. Tell me, has a child ever said something that stopped you in your tracks and made you see clearly? Has someone you least expected ever told you a truth you needed to hear? I read every single comment. And your stories matter just as much as this one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And I will see you in the next story.